Okay, welcome back. Right, we are now going to try to explore this scripting language thing, which I've thought about before, but I've never thought about in relation to this. It's kind of like a new kind of like formulation. But before that, I'm going to provide just an alternative little graphic for this that I came up with. Oh, actually, no, I've drawn it. I put it into this. Here we go. Right. So, let's have a look at these. I don't like slides, all right? And I never like slides. I think they're rubbish. All right? However, if it's done in the right way and it's reflexive, hopefully this is going to make some kind of sense. So, visual construction of reflexive reading. Okay, it's an appendix in this book. I don't know what DMP means. What's a DMP? I don't know. I think I might have to delete that. I don't know. Right. That is the first image there. You've got your TW. I don't think it's actually... yeah, it said it at the top there. Okay, what TW stands for. Different time periods. The time period of the writer, TW, the time period of the reader. Or in our case, the time period of me, the performer, and you, time period of... Let's stick to R. Okay, the responder. You're not really responding, but the receiver. Okay. Gosh, I hate that kind of language. I hate it. All right. However, let's move forward. Let's try and adapt the language that we've been given. So the text, as you can see, meaning appears to go from here to there. All right. I don't like static things. I don't like them. Okay, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be shifting over to the right-hand side. That is T0. At any moment, okay, we, the writer and the reader, me, the talker, and you, the listener, are at the same moment experiencing the text, or in this case, the video. This less so, because I don't, it's kind of more like in me. Text is definitely this thing. When you're looking at me, you're kind of using this like it's a window, but the representational form is quite different. So basically it puts us both on the same side looking at the same text. Okay? Yeah, it's a slightly different medium than this. Right, oh gosh, look at that. Ayer's diagram. Okay, that's too complicated. Right, so here we go. Transference interpretation. So that first image there, we're talking about the writer, and what they're doing is effectively inputting information onto the, like I've done here, this text on the board here, and then you in the future you read that. Oh yeah, that's true. That's kind of accurate. Okay, it's chronological. It's emphasizing the chronological difference. Now the process here is writer-only experience, memory, and representation. So this is the writer. So what happens is they experience something. Like I experienced a bunch of kids in a room. I experienced them all and had this kind of experience. And what I then do is I write about it and put it into text, imagining what I had experienced. So I wrote about the kids and I imagined. Now, this doesn't actually exist. There is an imaginative thing. Okay? It's not actually the kids, it's my projection. Okay? So the text, the cat sat on the mat, is my projection. It's not actually the cat. We know this. So it's an imaginative thing. And because it's imaginative, it means other people can imagine the cat. So this illusion, X dash, is the illusory object. The text describes this illusory object that I've got in my mind as I'm writing it. Right. Great. The parallel interpretation. And that's what you're doing. So you're reading the text, the book, okay, and you're imagining the cat. Okay, in this case, there, a bunch of kids in a room. But your imaginary X-W-R is different from mine, X-W. Okay, our imaginations will be slightly different based on the text, right? But there should be enough correspondence for us to be useful. And the experience of writing and reading. So now we're going to, instead of talk about the object X dash, the kids in the room, cat on the mat, what we're interested in is going, wait a minute, let's have a look at this text business. This momenting as we're going through the text. And it appears that XW is happening at TW, i.e. I'm writing it at that moment, the experience of writing, and your experience of reading, XR, is happening at your chronological time at TR. Okay, that makes sense, yeah, we're okay with that. That's the chronological difference, asynchronous. But the relative moment of writing, reading, is this. So the moment of our writing and reading, using a hermeneutic imaginative practice, it's at the same moment. So the XW and the XR is attempting to imagine the same thing. That is the contract, okay, is that X dash is both W and R. Okay, we're trying to imagine the same thing. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And the reflexive reading basically indicates that and summarizes all as one thing. That's X dash 0. Whatever the experience X dash 0 is, it's actually our experience of this reading of this text. Whatever the object of my thought is about cats or about kids in a room, actually our experience is I'm reading this, person's writing this, we're all reading this. That's actually the experience, X dash 0. That's actually the experience. Me as the writer, you as the reader, we're all kind of imaginary. The only thing that's real is the text. That's actually physical. That's the physical thing. And the object of thought, whatever it is you think, I think, and even if it's kind of like very similar to be the same thing, it's all, you know, these are all imaginary. That's why I've got dotted lines around them. The only thing that's actually real is is our shared experience. Actually, this is the conditional factor, I think, where, in fact, I had some subtleties there. If we're referring to the same thing, okay, so if you also were a teacher, or have been a teacher, you've done any kind of teaching, or any kind of context that's related to teaching, being with a bunch of people and trying to help them learn something, okay, that experience and my experience means that we share an experience of the past. And therefore, when I'm talking about it, in my experience, you can correlate it to your experience of a similar thing. And that's very different than, you know, Armstrong coming back from the moon and saying, I stepped on the moon. You're like, what the hell? I haven't stepped on the moon. But you still can correlate to it because I've stepped onto things. I've stepped on my car, and I've got into mud. Well, not much mud on the moon, but, you know, onto a desert, Atacama Desert. Well, yeah, it's really dry and arid or something, I don't know. Okay, but the idea is you can correlate to your experience, because otherwise, if somebody pops up and says something that you've absolutely no experiential reference to whatsoever, you'll just go, I can't even parse that language. I bleep black blocked. Did you? You bleep black blocked, did you? What does that mean? That's a different language. What I actually mean is, you know, I climbed down a tree. Oh, okay, I know what a tree is. I've climbed down a few trees. I know what you're talking about. Or even if you haven't climbed down trees, you've seen other people climb down the trees. And that variation, okay, of whether you've actually experienced an almost identical experience with another person, or you've seen other people have that experience, right? And that level of differentiation, that's what this is about, okay? It's being able to differentiate. And we're effectively giving some degree of authority to the person who's actually had the practice. In my case, me with a bunch of kids in a room, okay? And you're kind of giving that. The reader gives authority to the writer to describe their experience. And it's my job to try and follow that. And that's what I did with kids. When a kid interrupts, it's absolutely true what they have to say. I'm going to follow what they have to say, whatever it is. And hopefully it's going to be enlightening to me or to them or to anybody else that's listening. Okay, that's my objective. And if it's not, which it very seldom is, okay, it's always interesting in some form or other. It's just to do with how relevant it is to our collective movement. Okay, learning the maths or the history or whatever it is. Okay, it might be relevant, and we have to put, you know, or it might be more irrelevant, but we have to kind of somehow or other, well, it's more like that to me. And so we end up going in the right direction, manifesting a social ontology, which is effectively we all pass an exam, or we all improve the state of the world, or we manifest social science. Right. Yep, okay, so that's a visual representation of that. Right, now the next little thing is, I started off this years ago. Okay, you know, I don't know, an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, with this, if you remember correctly, the cat with inverted commas, cat with square brackets. Okay, so I'm going to write that here. No, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, in order to differentiate these different levels of reality, the subtle bit of this last image, in order to kind of put ourselves in an appropriate position of following and leading. We tend to follow the author. But what we recognize with this is that although we're experiencing the same moment, reflexive reading, the first social fact, the second social fact is the sharing. It means that the person that's more, the power is in the reading, okay? Not only in the construction of the reading, but also in the sharing, okay? And then the manifesting of the social effect of the result of the reading. That's the third social fact. Now, and that is led by the people that are making the action, that is actually enacting whatever it is that we potentially could benefit from all doing. So I think there should be a call to action. I haven't actually done one for this. I think I have to add that. I think I have to add a call to action. Call to action. It's not really a call to action, but that's the kind of phrase for it. It's not really a call to action. It's an invitation. An invitation to action. An invitation to action. Now, let's have a look at these different ways to try to differentiate the different realities that we have and different ideas. How do we sort that out so that we prioritize where we are in our relationship to the writer, whatever the reality of the writer, whatever the writer's talking about, are we willing to follow them and all this kind of stuff. And we need to have a rigorous way of doing that, otherwise it's all soft and baggy, we just end up chatting. And that's why social scientists so far have borrowed the methodologies of hard sciences and criticism and everything else, because that seems to be the only rigorous way of going forwards. And I say no. Whereas if you look at the Buddhists and Eastern mindfulness and so on and so forth, there's rigor in that. There's a lot of training involved in that, a lot of practice in that. And you know when you engage people that are quite mindful, okay, that they're not imposing whatever it is that they think is going on upon one's condition. People doing therapy, certain kinds of gentle therapy and so on and so forth. And that's really what we want, okay? And if we're in that state, okay, if we are listening in this kind of way, and we are practitioners in this kind of way, we need to have a bit more rigor though, to be able to differentiate who's kind of like got a bead on this thing, who can actually describe this in the best possible way that we can maybe, or suggest various activities, meta methods, that we can try and practice, and it improves my quality of existence, other people's quality of existence, actually works. Pragmatic, kind of pragmatic critical realism, or systemic inquiry, or third order cybernetics. Let's use these words. Okay, let's use these. This is just a little thought experiment, right? Came up with this quite a while ago, and I think it was more sophisticated than this, and I think I had more typologies. So this is to do with a typology. Typography. Typology, typography. Typography. Okay. Now, I don't think that we're going to adopt this in our academic text, but I'm kind of suggesting it kind of almost like playfully, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how serious I am with this. Right, so we have one thing, the cat. Now that refers to the text. The cat refers to the text. Now this text is in this field, the representational field, the cat. Okay, the words, the phrase. The cat, in square brackets, actually refers to this. The cat. This is the actual object in actuality. So the cat, that phrase, might or might not refer to a real cat. In this case, it doesn't. However, you might have an imagination of a cat. That's a third thing. That's what the curly brackets, and that refers to the cat. Okay? Now, I put the cat, okay, the a cat is this. It's going into the category term. The cat refers to a specific, the definitive cat. So this is a new thought for me, refers, that kind of has that kind of direction. The cat, this cat. Whereas a cat kind of goes in that direction. Because you've got different ideas of cats. We've all got different ideas of cats. And in fact, when we're talking about the cat, okay, this pen, the pen, we think we're talking about the pen. Okay, there is this thing here. In actuality, square bracket this. It's actually an object there. But an ant walking up this thing doesn't think about it as being a pen. They're thinking about it as being a little tree stump. Well, actually a tree. They don't know it's a stump yet. Then they get to the top, they're like, oh, and they go round it, and they go wandering off again. Okay, and so that is like a tree stump, a little tree stump. It might not even have a concept of that. Okay, it's just got to an end and then it moves forwards. I actually don't know what the mentality of a phenomenological experience of an ant is. Okay, well, another thing, it might be a flying ant who gets to the top of something and goes, got to the top of it, this is as high as I'm going to go, I could go down and go somewhere else, this is how I'm going to go, fly, and poof, okay, no, I need to be higher, okay? It probably won't have a memory of that, it just goes up to the top, got to the top of something, it leaps off and flies. You know, the phenomenological experience, mental state of an ant is it's quite difficult to appreciate. So, it's a good test, it's a good test. Now, the cat, okay, but that's kind of a small detail. I don't know why I brought that up, but it's kind of interesting. We're always dealing with this, wherever it is that we've got in our minds. So even when we're actually looking at a pen, okay, this thing, whatever this thing is, square brackets indicates we're not going to argue about whether it's called the pen or whether it is a pen or what it means to be a pen. Is that we're trying to frame it with the square brackets of going, okay, whatever that is, well, that's what we're talking about, okay? And so that framing, okay, if you're interested in this kind of way of thinking, is trying to do it almost like objectively in a pure mathematical way. It's a guy called Spencer Brown. He came up with the laws of form. And the closest I've got to this is, and understanding this, is we're framing it. Okay, I don't know how I've done this. Okay, so we're kind of going, this. Okay, the pure form is just, you draw a circle to go, we're interested in this, so we're making a mark, and we're trying to indicate in all of actuality, of all the things that we could be talking about in the world today, and what we could be thinking about at the moment, all the films we could be watching, all the food we could be eating, I definitely need a drink, all of these things, oh no, what we're paying attention to with our attention, our experience, and our minds, this incredible self-reflexive quality of existence is this tiny little circle on this board in my room in the past for you. Okay? Not relevant, I know. But the pure thing is basically your attention. You're bringing your attention to something. And the laws of form try to capture that in a mathematical form, in a minimal mathematical form, which underlies all of mathematics. And he is an outsider, an outlier in mathematics. But it's quite interesting because the guy called Luhmann adopted this Spencer Brown's language, look into it, and Luhmann is in the 1970s, and he's come back into a little bit of favour because he adopts this idea of it's not the reference, it's making a mark and an indication. By saying this, I'm putting a word to go inside, as opposed to everything outside, which is the environment. Now you don't actually have to label that because it is everything outside of this. People think, and I've said this before, it's not this. Okay, so we say this, not this. The trouble with saying not this is it kind of hints of another bubble, another thing, this. Whereas this, and you don't even have to say it, is not this. Okay, and the way I get beyond that is I use this method of saying that it's not -7, it's saying just not 7, not 7. So you've got a number line, and you've got, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're basically saying 7. 7 refers to that point on that line, okay? Whereas -7, or I prefer bar7, means everything else, absolutely everything else, okay? All the other numbers, okay? Apart from that bar7 is specifically everything else except that. Okay, all take away 7. Okay, everything take away 7. Anyway, if you're interested, that's kind of okay. But what we're trying to indicate with this is that we're trying to be as light as possible. So when you're with a bunch of kids, it's not about defining this. We're not trying to define this, because if you're defining it, you're going into this and then these categories. These are categories. The cat. Oh, the cat is like, then there's the dog. Oh, right. And then there's the animal. Okay, and this starts getting into theory of classes, which is animal, cat, dog. Cats are a subset of animals, dogs subset of animals, and that kind of classification. Classification is happening in this area, okay? Whereas classifications of these, less so, okay? There's a correlation, okay, of the evolution of animals that are different from the evolution of, well, I don't know, it's an insect and animal, kind of is, of plants, okay? And that would be another category, animal, plant, okay? And there is some form of relationship of the history of the existence of a cat, meow, okay, and a dog, woof, okay, in reality, okay, because of its history in reality. Whatever it is that we're pointing at has got something going on, and we're just guessing at what it is, okay, we're just guessing, okay. But the actual history of cats and dogs and so on and so forth has some relationship to the kind of categories that we can manipulate. Okay. And it's that correlation that allows us to have, you know, the incredible Darwin's theory of evolution. Okay, that's quite different from the concept of the cat, referring to the cat, and whatever it is that we've got in our minds. And we put it in curly brackets to indicate it's not a word. That's a different thing. This is a physical thing, the word. This is a sound bite, okay, which is slightly different from this. Okay, it's more like I just said something. Okay, but this, actually, I'm not sure about. Okay, right, got this? This is a concept. Now, that's kind of okay. I could just about understand that. This is something that's in my head, in my mental representation of a cat, the associations I have with my cat, and that kind of has kind of like wibbly bits of association to lots of things. Ooh, I don't like cats. Ooh, I like cats, and you know, so on and so forth. Oh, I remember my cat. Yeah, that was very nice. Remember the cats when they turn up and they go, and they kind of choose their owners. That kind of, you know, lots of funny like things that we have in our heads whenever we say, ooh, the cat. All right, something is dull. The cat's out of the mat. Scientists are generally looking at this relationship. What's the relationship between this and this? And what we're interested in, this cat and anything to do with therapy or anything like that. What's going on in your head? And when you're actually dealing with a whole bunch of kids, it's mostly this, and yet we're trying to get them to look at some aspects of reality. But we're trying to do it mostly through categorical and representational forms. So it's actually this relationship that we're kind of mostly doing, even though science is attempting to prepare people to try and understand what's actually going on in actuality and how cats evolved, or how people, you know, experienced life in 1943 and so on and so forth. Okay? Now, should we adopt this kind of typography? What are we referring to? Right, so when you read "the cat sat on the mat," okay, I actually put those things. But normally in books and so on and so forth, it's just this cat sat on the mat. Okay, whereas perhaps what we should be doing is we're saying, well, everything that you read, okay, the cat sat on the mat, all of that is in your head, in various chunks, possibly. Or should we be saying, I'm actually talking about, actually, the cat sat on the mat. There's actually a cat sitting on the mat over there. There isn't. Okay, but we can pretend. If we pretend, it's that. Okay, but it gets confusing. But, or should we be doing, the cat sat on the mat, it's just a script. Now, that gives us our three different kind of modalities of how science and language and everything else works. We think, oh, that's okay, that's kind of relatively easy, I think we can do that. However, it gets complicated. And the reason why it gets complicated is because when we say the cat and that's a phrase, that we can point out as in reality. So, actually I should do different colours. This is the bit that I actually thought of earlier this morning. I didn't make a note of it. And it's to do with the fact that the cat, okay, the script, becomes the reality. Not the actual cat, the script becomes the thing that we study. That's what we've been doing. So the methodology of whatever it is that we come up with representational forms, including mathematics, is describing this. So we could say, for example, 3 cats. Okay, so 3 is related to whatever it is that we think 3 is. Okay, but the number 3, the word 3, is whatever it is that we think 3 is, which is quite a complicated thing, let's just say. But that refers to literally the 3 cats. 1, 2, 3 cats. Okay? So the 3 we've been using for mathematics, referring to the 3 things, and there's a correspondence there, whereas what we're interested in is this side, reflexive. But what they've done, what we've done kind of accidentally with social science, is we've adopted this methodology, this relationship from this to this. We've said that science, the application of 3 to 3 objects, oh, that's counting. Oh, okay, that's very useful. And that's mathematics, that's the shapes and so on and so forth. Square, that refers to the shape. Look at the shape. Okay, square, bracket, square. All right, and so the cat, okay, the cat's up on the mat. Okay, it's talking about the cat. How did the cat sit on the mat? When does the cat sit on the mat? Let's study that and so on and so forth. That's fine. Okay, that's kind of okay. That's the scientific approach. Fine. And it's usually not cats, okay, because cats are actually still quite tricky, right? But if it's about like a bridge, then we've got that down, nailed down perfectly well. What happens is that we take this, the cat, as being the thing. We treat it as a thing. And then we apply some language to it, and we have some thoughts about it. And we're applying the same methods as if this is the thing. Does that make sense? The cat is in reality, it's pen. But if we take the pen, the word the pen, as being the object of thought, as being a thing that actually exists, and has an ontological reality, as much as the pen has, okay, then we are trying to apply the same methods of science to do with numbers and analysis and critical and disproof and proof and so on and so forth. We end up with hell of a lot of confusion. I think it's a mess. I think that's a mistake. And I think that's it's close to Bhaskara's fallacy, epistemic fallacy, or another guy, not Davenport, but close to that. He talked about it as being the language fallacy, I think it was. So we're taking this as being the thing that exists, as if it's a thing. And we're applying the same methods of study that we developed for relating categories and all our maths and everything else, basically science. So we call this science. This is the science method. The reason why we can do that is because we can test things. So we've got an actual reality and we can conduct experiments. Like the famous one, the cat, Schrodinger's cat in a box and all that kind of stuff. That was trying to push the boundary of the fact that we don't know and the duality and so on and so forth. But if you do want to, the cat in the bag, there is a cat in the bag, put it in the river, is there a cat, whatever. It's not meant to be like a philosophical point. Science is really good about developing and working out, how does this work? Right, okay. I don't think it works that way. Look, here's an experiment, it shows this. Therefore, whatever theory you've got, whatever ideas you've got about what's going on here is incorrect, because this is primary. The trouble is, if we take the word as being primary, which is what we've done academically, with all our citations and referring to various authors and so on and so forth, and the authorship, and it just starts turning into the most ludicrous nightmare of confusion, because we're trying to use the scientific method on words. Okay. And that's called substantivization, reification, and we end up with the invisible subject. i.e. we don't see the cat. We don't see the kids in the group. We don't even see the academics, okay, which is completely absurd. So we're interested in this process. So we're interested in how does any form of representation, we're actually more interested in this. Okay. How do we relate to each other? How do our concepts relate? But this is parallel to us. So our actual existence, my actual existence, your actual existence, we've got whatever ideas that we've got, and we have to correlate whatever ideas we've got, and feelings and so on and so forth, so that we, as embodied physical existences, actually manifest some kind of social power, social science. Okay? So this is a mistake. I don't think we should be doing this. I don't think we should be relating through this. We shouldn't be looking at this as being a window from one person to another. I don't think we should be doing like representation. So all these things, you know, representation, I don't think is correct. Okay, we're saying no to that. We don't want to have that as a representation. We do not want to have, what we want to have is we want to have this reflexive. Okay, so this is not a window. Window, no, we don't want that. We want to have this as reflexive and it's living. Okay, this becomes a window, this becomes fixed, this becomes asynchronous, this becomes atemporal. These are all the tendencies, and I think we've gone over that about the pathologies of social science as it currently stands. It becomes atemporal. It means that it's like people, you know, in a class are operating like a bridge, and a bridge is basically a static structure. And yes, we do have the mathematics for dynamic structures, and then we try to apply the mathematics of dynamic structures to us as people. I would know. Okay, so we definitely don't want this word representational form. We almost want to be as light as possible. Okay, I don't know if I can go through this any further than that. Is there any kind of like aha moment? Maybe you've got an aha moment here. Okay, can you follow this along? In terms of the text and representation, we're interested in this bit. We're interested in the reflexive living experience of you and us in reality coming up with things. And the way we do that is whatever representational form we have, and of course we do have to have representational form, but it's almost like minimal to reflect our psychosocial state of behaviour. Our momenting through text, first social fact, second social fact, our sharing, whatever it is that we're sharing and how we're sharing it, and the third social fact is that results in a social ontology which affects other people in a kind of more as a collective result, all right, and therefore it involves purpose. So it's like swarming or murmuration. Okay, so you get the intersubjective. First social fact, we're reading this, fine, it's just me. Second social fact, our interaction, and the third social fact, it's our collective. Okay, all of us as a collective. Second one is interdependence and intersubjective. First is subjective, and the third is whatever our collective result is to another person appears to be ontologically real as a fact. Is that good enough? Beep beep, babbity boop. I think it's good enough. I can't get anything more than that. Is this useful? Would this be a useful typography? Maybe there are people watching this, if anybody ever does watch this. Oh, Wendy's gone. She's gone. She just thought, I've got this. I understand what you're talking about, David. Don't worry, I've got it worked out. I've written it down. I'm about to tell you. Welcome back, Wendy. I hope you've got some answers here, Wendy. You know, is this useful? Do you think it's useful? Don't think you can actually see that. Oh, you can see over here, maybe. Okay, Wendy, you can see that? Yeah. There's something here, right, that I think needs to be filled out, and I think I'll try and do that another time and see how I go forwards. Right, so that's good enough for me. Reflexive reading, and so this is a kind of positive sociology. Why? Because it's this side. It's actually the real side. Okay, it's based on verification. And so that's it. That's good enough for me. Thank you very much for paying attention. I hope you enjoyed it, and it's been stimulating, and you're going to come up with something brilliant for us to follow, and for you to lead us in the right direction for us collectively. Okay? Social science for the world. And thank you very much, Wendy, for paying attention to some of this, and I appreciate our friendship.